can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I
LinkedIn.
can't see anything else, can I? So
Yeah, no. I must say, once all three, and LinkedIn and YouTube. Cool. Fine. Yeah. So for those of you joining early, I think people must put it in their calendars for 5 minutes earlier, just so they can see the chaos that we do and how kind of stupid we all look, kind of gormlessly staring at a screen. So people think it's like really high production value. It's not, is it at all? It's just me with my laptop and a semi-professional looking mic. No, it has been thrown together a little bit more than that. I'm just going to mute all those feeds so I can, just to make sure it's all working and stuff. If you are joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, the comments are all open. Elizabeth is going to field them. She'll ping them through to me directly. Yeah, she's now going to get her tablet out so she can do that. Okay. So yeah, we are live, so people can hear all this. Yeah, while we wait for people to join in, because I know people get the notification, and then it will kind of go up. So yeah. How are you today, Dean?
I'm doing good. Little do they know we've gone through that in the last 10 minutes.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. That's it. When we do the like podcasts and stuff, it's like we do like 20 minutes of audio checks and records and re-records, and we know how each other is way before we actually go live. But it's just no, I haven't actually asked how was the weekend. Do you want to talk about your did you have a good weekend?
I had a great weekend. My birthday over the weekend, we went camping. I'm one of those lucky people who get the day off for my birthday.
That's very nice.
My company's really good like that. So I had a nice long weekend of 4 days. Yes, we went camping. Great sunshine, great weather. Too burnt on one day.
Yes, I think everyone did, didn't they?
Did you enjoy it? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, no, I did actually. I went to a festival. I went to Slam Dunk at Hatfield House, which was amazing. Kind of nice. For those of you into that sort of music, kind of pop punk sort of vibes. It's like the mecca of it sort of thing. And yeah, it was my little one's first ever festival, like proper alternative festival, and she had an absolute ball, and it was just beautiful to watch. So yeah, genuinely had a very, very good time. Just while we get everyone set up, I'm just realizing I probably should close Slack on my laptop so it doesn't come to that. There we go, got it. Fine, cool. Yeah, it's seamless. This is seamless. And then what do we do on Sunday? What did I do on Sunday? I can't remember what I did on Sunday. Oh, it's the rugby. I went to Twickenham. I saw the Barbars play the World 15, which was great fun.
Right.
Are you into your rugby or not so much?
I'm not. No, the eldest son is into rugby. I'm just into football. So
I must say, we then did go to the final day of the Premier League. Who do you support? Do you want to admit that live on air?
Yeah, I'm a Man United fan. The eldest is an Everton fan, so he was a bit nervous for the weekend.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yeah, I must say my accumulator didn't come in. I think Man United almost threw me under the bus when they went 1-0 down. I was very upset by that. We'll give it another 1 minute or so for people to join in. So just sort of looking at the numbers, see if they'll kind of spike a little bit. I say if anyone's online, say hello in the chat. I think hi Mark. Good to have you here. If you've got any questions throughout. So this is kind of our first is educational. And actually kind of like an actual kind of with learning outcomes, which is very meta because we're going to talk about training and sort of training programs, which is kind of fun. But yeah, so if you've got any specific questions, chuck them in the chat. I'll either fill them there and then, or we might just save them to the end, Dean, so we don't kind of overload us with it. So we will make a start. I'm joined, I say, Dean, thank you, Sandiford from DTS. I've asked you so many times exactly how to call the company. I think DTS is the safest one to go with. It is obviously tagged in all the various events so people can find the company. But did you want to do a quick introduction or just jump straight into the content?
Yeah. Do you want me to introduce the content or myself, or which one do you want to?
Whatever, really. I mean, we'll go into the content in a second. More about kind of yourself and DTS in a nutshell. So we don't kind of overload the audience too much. I don't want to be too salesy. I'd rather kind of keep it kind of light.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. Driving Test Success, the well known for their car app, the 4-in-1, and we do a lot of training for Mod 1A, B, and 2, which is your hazard perception theory test, and your CP. You go on to actually do your practical training. Provide that either app or online. I deal with more the online area. It's the corporate consumer area. So yeah, it's just provides all that training material that they need, those tests.
Nice.
All the information that they need, stuff like that.
And so, what's your sort of your background?
My background is
in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, started off in the logistics, transport, worked my way up, transport manager, dealing with 2 sites. Then I went traveling for a few years, experienced life, and then came back and got heavily into training then. And yeah, I've worked with apprenticeship companies, training providers, various ones, various different subjects. I specialize more in the transport manager and the project management side of training. And yeah, now I'm at Driving Test Success, leading a new online e-learning portal that we've got.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. We'll hang on to the end before we do kind of all around that sort of stuff. We've got quite a lot of stuff to discuss in terms of why we're getting on today and what kind of the content is, but in terms of what TMC and DTS are working on together and what we're going to be doing in the future. So we'll kind of save that bit, but it's kind of a nice segue, obviously your background in training. So what are we actually going to be discussing today?
Well, today we're going to discuss how to create that bespoke training course for your drivers and help them become a professional driver and be a professional driver and stay a professional driver, and how they can benefit you.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to kind of, I know a lot of our audience are TMs and a lot of them are not necessarily trainers themselves. And sometimes it can get quite overwhelming in terms of how we can kind of support drivers in sort of upskilling themselves. So I think the point of today was to really kind of give transport managers a bit more confidence, with a few more techniques on how to actually do that, whether that is kind of the traditional CPC or whether it's kind of looking at how we can deliver it kind of in-house with stuff. So for the audience, we have got a script of shorts. We've got things we want to talk about. So if I'm looking down here, it's because I'm reading my notes to make sure we keep to time. This is quite a big chunky kind of topic, and I don't want to kind of overrun. So it's mostly there just to hold me to time and stuff. So yeah, if I look over here, that's why. So I guess you want to kind of just give us a summary of like what we're going to cover in terms of today, like what's kind of the key outcomes.
The key outcomes are how to create that training course for your drivers. So how to identify the subjects, how you're going to deliver the training, how you're going to assess it, and more importantly, the feedback as well. They're the key areas that we'll go through.
Should we kind of jump in straight at the beginning? So identifying the subject. So what are some of the key factors to consider when setting kind of the objectives and sort of working out what needs to actually know?
Yeah, well, there's 2 ways you can do a standard set of light driver CPC. You choose the 5 modules that you want to do in driver CPC, and you can go out and outsource it. But it doesn't help those drivers who are on the day-to-day issues, or reporting back to the office. And so you've got to figure out how and what you need to find for a particular subject. So what are the goals of the training course, and what specific knowledge or skills do you want your drivers to acquire? So you could go from basic issues and you could do. So you've got the key objective here is to identify each of those drivers, what additional training, what additional support do they. One of the things I like to do is use an icebreaker with the drivers, and it's typical of any course when you start.
Yeah.
Go around the room, you do the icebreaker, and they say to, right, tell us something interesting about you, or pick a color type thing.
Yeah.
So what I normally used to do with my drivers is hand them a questionnaire or a crossword. If you give them a crossword or something where it's got the questions and they can put an answer to, if they're struggling on those particular answers, you know that they need help then on that. So there's a few techniques that you can use, and you could have conversations.
I guess as a lot of our audience are external transport managers, and they work with their drivers every week, but they're not necessarily on site every day. And would you kind of put this as part of like the interaction with the driver, not necessarily at the beginning of a training course, but actually when you start working with the driver, when you maybe recruit a new driver, or when you start working with a new customer, you take the time to really kind of find out what they're doing and what their knowledge base is.
Yeah, exactly. Just like you would do with a customer when you're going to meet about a contract that you want to start with them. You'll do your research on that driver, on that customer, and you can apply that same thing as to that driver. So you can obviously look through their CV. You can have conversations with them, get to know the drivers. As a transport manager, what I used to tell my staff was, I don't want you to tell me about the good things that happen in there, because I can see those and I'll celebrate those with you. What I want you to tell me each day, every time I'm talking to you, is what problems you've got, what issues you've got. So then I can understand what's not working, so I can help them to get to that point where they've got less and less problems as each day goes on.
Yeah, I think that's it. Training can be proactive and reactive in terms of kind of how you kind of define what sort of content you're going to talk about, or what sort of training you're going to provide. And I think that can only work, but both of those require communication with the driver and with the team that you're training. You can't, it's very easy to kind of go, here's our top level, these are the 5 things I want to talk about, whatever. But it's like, well, you either need them to screw up, so you can then kind of reactively kind of like deal with that, or you need to be seeing what's happening out on site so you can then proactively kind of move to reduce those issues. So I think it's important to kind of actually get the driver involved in the process,
and go out with the driver, job shadow them. Spend time with your drivers, spend time with your staff in the office. The traffic office has got a multitude of different levels of capability of people. Spend time with those, job shadow them, see how they're working, and see how you can effectively improve their day.
Yeah, I think that kind of gets us onto a nice point of what factors like should you consider when choosing the delivery method, because there's lots of different ways you can deliver training, and I think we'll touch on it in a little while, but peer-to-peer or kind of job shadowing is very much part of that, in terms of it's not just so didactic as send someone on a CPC course and off you go and deal with it, or sit someone down in a classroom. It's so many different ways you can deliver training. I actually recorded a webinar on this specific kind of topic with John a few weeks ago, which will be going live onto the TMC shortly, go into more details, so this kind of complements that for sure. But do you want to kind of dive into what should you take into account when choosing the delivery method?
There's obviously a few things. You've got who is actually going to be attending the training course. It's a major factor to consider, whether they are drivers, whether they are office administrators, or whether they're supervisors. In who is actually going to attend the course is key. And once you've found out who is attending the course, you can send them an assessment type tool. There's quite a common one online, which is called VAC or VARC. There's 2 different types of assessment ones, and it's basically to what type of learner they are. So before you're going to do that training, how to prepare that training for them, because it gives an idea of whether they're going to be a visual type of learner.
I was going to say, yeah.
Someone who learns by sound, which is the audio, or whether they like to read things and understand things before they actually go and perform that task. So understanding your learners who's coming to that session is a great start for you opening up that training course, and also understanding what their level of understanding on that subject as well. So you can send them like 2 quizzes, one on the subject and one to understand what type of learner they are.
I think it's also important to sort of remember when it comes to kind of styles of learning is no one fits into one box specifically. I think everyone is a blend of those, and sort of, so obviously VAC or VARC is visual, audio, reading, writing, and then kinesthetic, which is doing. Most people go, "Oh, I'm a learner by doing." Like a lot of people that are more vocationally driven, maybe less academic in their sort of skill set, will say they learn by picking it up as they go along, more kinesthetic learning. But actually, it's also not just different types of learning for learners, but also different types of learning for different subjects as well. So some subjects do lend themselves massively to kind of visual. Sometimes it's better to be kind of kinesthetic and movement based. So I think these are getting quite complicated. I don't want to get too dead because obviously we're not training people to be trainers. But it's being sympathetic to the way people do like to learn. And
exactly,
I can think of nothing worse. Then I was like, I can think of nothing worse than just listening to podcasts to learn stuff, which is ironic when I literally run a podcast. But I don't like. I'd much rather read a blog over 20 minutes about a subject than listen to something. It's just the way my mind works, and I really struggle with. But audio for entertainment purposes, perfect. So it's like it's different types of content for different sorts of delivery method. But anyway, we digress. So in terms of delivery method, obviously there's a few different types. Do you want to kind of run through them in a bit more detail?
So you can do it in person, you can do it online, or you can do a mixture of both. So there's also e-learning as well that you can provide. But the more you're prepared for that course, the more entertaining it's going to be for the people who are attending. So even if you don't use assessment tools that you bring to the course, at least they're there and ready if you are going to use them. The worst thing, deliver a training course and not be prepared for every type of eventuality.
And I think that it extends to things like this as well, which is why we do quite a lot of prep when we do these sort of sessions. Is like we write things down to make sure we know what we're going to talk about, because there's nothing worse than someone fluffing their lines.
No, exactly. I hope I haven't already.
No, well, that's I'm guiding you with different questions. If I throw a curveball at you, that's on me, not on you. But but I also think you also don't want to read from a script, which I know we sort of said we've got a script. We've got bullet points. Don't if someone is going to use a PowerPoint, which is great, I think PowerPoints has to have a purpose. Don't read the slide.
No, there's nothing worse. When you create a PowerPoint, you should have bullet points on there. That's it, clear. And that's because you want to engage with the learners, and you want the learners to engage with you. You don't want them to engage with the PowerPoint that's behind you.
Yeah.
So PowerPoints are great, like you said. Bullet points, videos, have videos in there, but you want to prepare handouts throughout that session. You want to have games going on in that session, and you want to have it interactive. And
discussions, Q&As.
And little group sessions as well. There's nothing wrong with a couple of groups. Splitting them up, let them have a bit of fun between themselves and see what they come out with, and then have a discussion about it afterwards.
Case studies and scenarios suit really well to that delivery method. Is kind of pose a question or a case study and go, what should you have done, or what happened next? Those are really, really great kind of starters for those sorts of discussions. I think just kind of going back to the point about not reading a script, my dad is a ex-geography teacher. He retired 5 years ago, but he's gone back to school to support his old department while someone's on long-term sick leave. And he's an old school teacher, like blackboards, textbooks, maybe, like if you decided to use them, like it's he taught a subject, not necessarily an exam. sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he's gone back and it's all Google Classroom, everything is pre-written, and it's just like he can't put his personality, or he does, but he has to ignore what's been prepared to put that
Yeah.
personality on. And I think it's it's really important. People learn from people, and so you need to kind of build a personality and build a rapport with your audience. That only happens by how you interact with
Definitely.
them. And I think reading a script is not the best way of doing that.
No, no,
So
definitely. And always prepare as well to fail in that training session. As a tutor, you're always prepared to fail as well. You're always going to forget to tell them something or
yeah,
discuss something. So always have your notes that you've prepared for that meeting to go out to those learners so they can take that away with them. So they've always
yeah,
got something to read about afterwards if they're interested. They may not be interested, but there's always that hope as a tutor. You've got that one person who's really engaged with it and wants to go into it a little bit further.
yeah.
So give them,
And I
give them
think
your notes.
that's. And I mean, we'll talk about getting feedback and the reasons why in a little bit. But like getting feedback helps to kind of close the loop, but also it means that you can then start looking at how you can develop the training further for that specific learner, that specific individual that might have interests or requirements beyond what you've spoken about, and that can only happen if you have that open dialogue. So, I mean,
Exactly.
we spoke about kind of classroom online, like delivery online or e-learning. What about kind of peer-to-peer learning? Like we spoke about job shadowing, like just
Yeah.
now. But in terms of peer-to-peer, how would you sort of learn that? Use that, sorry.
So peer-to-peer within the workplace, that is using the resources that are around you. So if you've got a driver or people in the office who are really clued up on a particular subject, teach others, get them to go out with others and to show them and demonstrate how to do things. Because most of the time, when you're in a classroom, it's all knowledge. You don't develop a lot of skills or particular behaviors while you're in there. So asking someone or yourself, going out with or going out into the office as well, because you could get drivers going into the office, training the transport clerks as well about what their days like, and going through how they use their tachograph.
So would you encourage kind of office staff doing kind of ride-alongs and actually going out in the cab as well to really get an understanding? Because I think I've done a few podcast episodes with people that have started off as drivers, went to planners, went to management, that kind of typical kind of step-by-step process. And the feedback I get is the transport managers that did that pathway, when they were planners, were far more sympathetic to the needs of the drivers, because they'd been there, they'd done that, they've dealt with the shitty loads, they've dealt with the kind of crappy lanes or whatever. They understand, and I think it's really easy to kind of point fingers if you don't really understand. And I think that's something that we kind of job shadow. Would you?
Definitely. I mean, I was quite lucky as I was growing up in the business. So I started in the transport office when I was 17. So I just left college, wanted to find a job. And the transport manager and the supervisors in there, really decent company back then. And they said to me, right, your first month, you're going out with the drivers. And the first day they put me on a job where I was going out with a driver, and it was back in the days, it was handballing. So as a driver,
Yeah.
you would also load the vehicle as well. So we went to this company 3 times in the day, and we loaded it with hanging garments. So we had to load this vehicle with hanging garments. I was knackered at the end of the day, absolutely shattered. And I thought to myself, these drivers, they go through a lot. So I did it the other way. I started off through the transport office, transport manager, then did the license, then everything else. So I did it the other way. But from the start, I had the respect for the drivers, but also the drivers had the respect for me as well when I was in the office, because they understood that I was relatable to them, because I went out there. I helped them handball these garments onto the vehicle. So yes, definitely. It doesn't just create that understanding for that person in the traffic office, or the driver, whichever way you want to do it. But it also gives you that relationship and that respect throughout the company, which is you can't buy or train that type of stuff.
I think that's it. That's not
that way.
It's not a box ticking exercise. You can't kind of say you've done
No.
it or you've got it. It's got to be like I think it's something we'll talk about it in a little while in terms of practicing what you preach as well. It's like you should sort of do what you say you do as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
I think
authentic.
that's it's all the soft skills I think as well in terms of like making sure you're relatable. And I think I mean I don't know how many of our audience have listened to kind of podcast episodes. What's happened there? Sorry, I've randomly heard my own voice. Apologies for that. I must have accidentally clicked one of the streams and unticked it. Yeah, yeah. I think the on the podcast I've transport managers, and it's always about how you kind of relate and communicate to operators, and I think that's kind of the being a people person. You can't train that. I've got a few questions coming in. We'll get to them at the end. I don't want to kind of distract the flow. So I saw a pop up in the corner. I don't want to distract where we're at. So kind of in terms of actually like coming up with the subject matter, we know what we want to deliver. We know we're going to go for a delivery method either online. So I mean, okay, let's go into a bit more detail actually, because obviously online versus offline, there's quite a, and then obviously we've got peer-to-peer and job shadowing, which is other bits and bobs, but like within kind of offline kind of in-person training, there's a few different types of ways you could deliver that, isn't there? You can either do like groups, small groups, one-to-ones, long form, short form, cardboard box. Like there's lots of like ways we can deliver that. What's your sort of view on the well, should we run through them in a bit more detail, kind of explain them?
Yeah, so you, in terms of design, you can decide now how many you want to be in that order you want to go through and what you're comfortable at as a tutor. And everyone's going to have various different styles of delivery, and they're going to have different types of comfortability issues as well in front of those people. I mean, most companies, let's say, have 30, 40 drivers that they may be wanting to train on something, and for somebody to stand up in front of 30 or 40 drivers is very intimidating. It's very difficult. As most tutors try to limit the number to around about 20, but you can do a larger audience as well.
I think it depends on the subject matter as well, doesn't it?
It does, and you know, the tutor, whoever the trainer is going to be, you've got to make sure you know that subject, because especially drivers, they will know that subject in and out. And the way I get by that is obviously understanding the subject, but understanding the history of the subject as well. So when we have discussions with learners, I can take them back to when it was to what it was now, and have that discussion about those improvements. So then they get to that respect of that that knowledge and how they can then improve it further on. So
I think we spoke about it in a previous chat we've had around like training is not just about learning new stuff, it's about reiterating and kind of reminding and reinforcing the importance of stuff. And I think being regardless of the delivery method, is it sometimes trainers can be very patronizing. It's like, no, drivers do know this, they know this inside out, but they might need reinforcing. And I think the way you deliver is very different when you look at it like that.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's why you've got to understand your audience. And if you are coming across as patronising as a trainer, you understand if you are coming across patronising. So you have to adapt to it. So you've got to learn to adapt to these things and go off in a different direction with them to reinforce that element that you want to deliver at that particular time. Yeah,
I say my background is workplace training as well. I've done that in the past, and you get people on the same course every year. I'm outside driving now, so I do like kind of fire warden training, for example. I've got one customer I still serve just because they're a great customer to work with, and it's a bit of a change for me. I don't do any classroom training anymore. It's quite nice to go in once a year and deliver it. It's the same group, and they're all door supervisors in high-vis flats. But it's great because you get to discuss kind of legislative changes in kind of, obviously we're talking about like Grenfell at the moment is a big topic in terms of like building regs and stuff that kind of comes up in a lot of detail. So it's just about reinforcing, and they love getting me in as a trainer because I'm not an employee. And because I'm external, I bring a different point of view, but also they listen to me, because sometimes it's very like, oh yeah, same, like listen. So it's quite hard they trust me because they know I'm an expert. And
Yeah,
so I think that's the thing as well. It's about knowing your subject matter and really backing yourself to know what you're talking about is also very, very important.
definitely. And that relationship as well is very important the difference between, let's say, a manager to a trainer to the learners. So if you're a manager and you're training, leave your management responsibilities outside there
Yeah.
and be the trainer and the tutor in the workshop or in the course that you're
Yeah.
delivering, because they're looking for your support and then your guidance. Obviously, you've got any issues that you've got to be aware of, but you're not managing them within that classroom anymore as their supervisor or their manager. You're managing them.
Yeah.
You're offering them whatever questions they've got. It's always a good question.
Yeah.
Always going to create discussions, and it's always going to engage that conversation back and forth.
Yeah.
So,
I always say it, there's no such thing as a stupid question.
no,
Like
no, there
it's
isn't.
actively encourage it, and it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy doing these things, is because I'm not a transport manager. Unfortunately, in this topic I am quite knowledgeable because I am a trainer, but as I'm not a transport manager, a lot of the questions I can ask is I actually don't know the answer, and that's absolutely fine because I don't need to know the answer, but I can act stupid. I can ask those things that people might not want to ask. So creating an environment where there is no stupid question so that people can ask those is actually very important as well. And
Definitely.
so having those sort of like ability to switch off your manager head, so you're not going to sort of like shout at someone for asking a question that you're like, you should know this. Like, well, yeah, they should know this, but you're not going to help them by telling them that. So don't say that. So
Exactly.
we say it's one of the reasons why the TMC exists as a product, is a lot of TMs go through the qualification, get the qualification, and come out and they don't know a clue how to do the job in the real world. Well, how could they? What have they done to learn that? The course doesn't provide that training for them. So instead of like shouting at them when they ask simple questions on Facebook groups, support them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
I
why
mean,
I
they've
say
got I mean, that's an especially difficult subject. I mean, they've got 2 weeks to learn, what is it, 39 subjects, something like that.
yeah,
Very, very difficult. I mean, I've done it myself. I've taught the classroom, the training. I've sat the exams multiple times just to see what the differences are in the tests. You know, it's very, very difficult. But at the end of it, you're none the wiser as a transport manager. Absolutely
no,
none the wiser. You know how to do specific things, like work out costings, but in the real world, it's nothing to do with the test.
yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah,
And
yeah, it's a
that's
tough
kind of
one.
what I say. We're not going to talk about it now, but like the mentor
No.
program we've got and the workshops we run is about that. Like we ran our first live workshop last week with Terry
Yeah,
Hattel, and that's fantastic. Like I learned shed tons. What I'm really enjoying is I'm getting to attend all these things. I'm learning so much, but it's like this is real world experience from real world people, and I think that's quite important. And anyway, we
yeah.
digress.
I agree.
So obviously, large groups, small groups, one to one is another sort of delivery method. Length of session as well, because sometimes you want to kind of get into something and maybe kind of talk for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and deliver a quite formal sized course. But a lot of the good learning is more toolbox talk delivery, where you might have a specific policy or a specific incident that's happened that you want to deliver. Now, a toolbox talk's a great delivery method for short, sharp learning with a key learning outcome that they can do before their shift. And it's not just here's a bit of paper, sign your name, and bugger off and go get driving. It's like, no, actually delivering the information. So what's your sort of view on toolbox talks?
I love them. I was first introduced them. I think I was about 20. And it's very difficult to get all your drivers to attend
Yeah,
because of the shift patterns and everything else that's going on. So what we used to do was a weekend session. So we would have a 2 or 3 hour session on a Saturday or a Sunday, and we'd be flexible, and we'd ask all the drivers to attend, and we would go through that session with them. So we'd have an update of the business, the usual stuff, and then we would have a training session.
yeah,
Particular policy that is either changed or come into force because of recent issues or changes of legislation, and of delivery is great because they're all together as a company, as drivers, able to beforehand and give their questions, issues that may come from it as well. So those are really good, important sessions to have with your drivers. And
I think, and it's obviously non-accredited, nothing like that. It's just very sort of like business-led sort of thing. Like, I mean, translated to what we do here, we've got a new bit of software we're using internally. We're like, we'll need to do some training to make sure everyone understands the finer points of it. So I put together a half an hour session on like how specific functionality, sit down as a group, deliver it, screen share if needed. Obviously it's software, it's slightly different, but like you deliver something it's not an accreditation, there's no badge to get, there's no certificate to get, it's just knowledge that you need to do your job, and sometimes that's the right way of doing it.
Some of the best training that you're going to get through life is not accredited training, and so we shouldn't discourage non-accredited training and leave it to one side and only focus on the accredited training. That's not what you should do as a company, as a manager, or as a trainer either.
I think accredited kind of qualifications, whether it's CPD or CPC or any other kind of awarding body, they're all fantastic and they serve a purpose to bring standardization to things.
Correct.
But every business is unique and every business is different, and sometimes if you try and stick to an accredited or like a regulated kind of scheme, you sometimes miss out on the nuance of kind of how to, like, the subject matter itself. It becomes a box ticking exercise. Not all the time, and I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying like all the content that we deliver on the TMC, whether it's the workshops like the one we did on understanding and auditing PMIs last week, it wasn't an hour CPC or part of the CPD or part of it. Like it was just good quality content that we know people are struggling with, and so we created that and delivered it. And it means that very quickly, like I always study, I mean, we'll do this towards the end when we get some ideas off the audience. Like I study the comments and stuff, and I go, well, what do people actually want? And then we put together a session based on that. And like obviously we've got 2 more sessions planned. We're doing 1 a month, you and I. Obviously next month, I don't know what we're doing. I can't remember what we're doing. Is it mental health?
Mental health.
Yeah. So that's going to be the subject. So, but then if someone comes up with another topic, we're like, well, actually, let's shift that and let's do a different thing. It's like, actually, with an accredited scheme, you can't do that because it has to be standardized, and that's the point of it. But it should be supplemented by this sort of stuff. I've just looked at the time, and I've realized that we are massively going to run out of time, so I'm going to kind of speed up. I'm guilty of this, not yourself. So obviously we've done the kind of coming up with the subject, like deciding on what we're going to deliver. We've spoken about delivering it in kind of the various ways we can deliver it. We'll talk about e-learning towards the end, because obviously we want to talk about kind of the partnership we've got going on. Next thing is assessment.
Yes.
So like how can you kind of gather not feedback, how can we assess learners? What's the point of it, and kind of why do we do that?
Okay. Well, we beforehand, where you can assess people before the training, and that's so you can discuss those topics within the training at that particular moment in time, to ensure that you're delivering what that learner actually needs. Doing Q&As during and after helps understand whether they are gauging momentum on the subject that's being delivered to them, and also as you as a tutor, you're understanding that knowledge is being transferred to that particular individual as well. So it is really important, and again, begin, end assessments, use them throughout, make them fun, make them interesting, and you'll find the benefits, especially at the end. At the end, again, if they've not learned or understood, you can then engage with a one-to-one training with that particular individual. So it's really, really beneficial that you do the assessment all the way through.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think continuous assessment is really good, especially if you're delivering a full day or a 3-day or a week kind of like course or whatever. It's like trying to expect someone to, like, because the assessment is not just about assessing learning; it's a way of consolidating the learning as well. I find, like, it's another way of them, like, for example, I mean, this sort of session is delivered in this way because that's the method we've decided is live stream. people can ask questions and talk about stuff, but it's not really a Q&A in the same way. But I really like when you're sort of training people is actually asking consolidatory questions that can consolidate learning. So like, rather than going, did you understand? Closed question, yes, no answer, not very helpful, is tell me, just kind of reiterate the point, like, of these three things, which of these is the right answer and why? And asking them to then give the and why, the open-ended question where it's not a yes no question or a one-word answer. And that assessment is great at the end, but actually if you're doing 7 hours of content, there's a lot of content to consolidate at the end. Actually doing it at the end of every each topic to kind of just make sure the group understands. And what I can't remember. It's like, I remember 10% of what I read, 20% of what I hear, 90% of what I teach. Essentially getting them to say back to you what you've told them as a way of it kind of embedding in the brain. I think that's the other benefit of doing ongoing assessment, is it allows them to kind of consolidate what they've learned from you back at you.
Definitely. I mean, we made I made a note further down in my notes about the cognitive awareness, and it's how your brain remembers things. And like we were saying before, everyone learns in various different ways. We also remember in various different ways as well. So the more you can have discussions or questions about things, the more that person's going to retain that knowledge. And then as they go away and they're playing those games again, because again, they can revisit those crosswords or word searches or quizzes that you hand out. You know, they can do. It's again improving their cognitive skills further and further along.
Yeah.
So, assessments are not just to assess whether you're a good trainer and you've got the bragging rights later. It's all about the learner, and teaching is all about the learner and making sure that they've got everything they need to go away. If you do that.
I think you probably get this within license acquisition, but I know when I learned all my sort of like training skills as a sailing instructor, so water sports, that's my background. That's where I started way back when in my teens, early teens. And I remember the chief instructor of my sailing club at the time said something really profound, and it kind of stuck with me, is I passed, they failed me.
Right.
And someone passes, I pass my exam. If they don't pass, they failed me. And actually, that's as a learner, as someone learning to sail, is if I didn't pass the thing, is they failed me. And I think actually that's 100% true. You as the trainer, it's your responsibility to help them pass. If they didn't pass, it's not because they're thick, it's not because they're stupid, it's because you didn't deliver it in an appropriate way for them to understand it. It's on you, not on the learner. I think that's really important to kind of remember. That is, it's not just about what you want, it's about what the learner needs.
Definitely, it's a two-way street. I mean, if someone's putting in the effort, as a tutor, you should match that effort and give them everything that they need to pass. And if somebody does unfortunately fail, as a tutor, you've got to take that to heart and say, they didn't pass for some reason. Why was it? Was it me?
Yeah.
Was it something I did? And review that. That's what you
and I think, in all
honesty,
it is always you. It's always your fault. Because, whatever it happened, it's you didn't create an environment where they could learn. You didn't explain something effectively. Maybe you didn't set the expectations to begin with. Maybe that you booked them onto the wrong course. But ultimately, it's not down to them. It is down to you. And I think that's something to be aware of. So,
definitely.
So next sort. Well, exactly. Yeah. So I think that kind of last point to touch on now is obviously feedback. So obviously, it kind of goes in with assessments to a certain extent, but obviously getting feedback on the learning is key, isn't it?
Yes. Like we were talking about. So when you have those quizzes and those questionnaires from start, middle, and end, again, this is why they're so good, because they generate that traffic of communication between you and the learner, or learners if it's a group. And if you give them feedback on those quizzes, then they're going to hopefully learn more as they go through. So you can that conversation to go back and forth. So you always want to give feedback throughout the duration of the lesson. But also as a tutor, you want that feedback coming back to you so you can make sure and ensure that learner is going to learn something. As a company.
And you can course correct as well, like mid course. Don't wait for the end to get that feedback. It's
No.
like if you're not asking, if you get to the end, it's like everyone's wasted their time. If you don't kind of, you can set expectations at the beginning of a course, but if it doesn't align with what they're expecting, it's kind of pointless.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I always do it at the beginning of a course. When I used to be a trainer, like full time, I'd be like, we're going to talk about this today. So everyone's sitting in the right room for the right content, because sometimes you get people coming to the wrong thing. And this is for people that have done this. This is why we're doing it. And it's like, if you don't get that feedback there, it's kind of a waste of time. So
Yeah, it's like going to the cinema and walking into the wrong room, isn't it? Watching the wrong film.
yeah, exactly.
For the wrong audience.
And then sometimes they're embarrassed about getting up and going to the other room or whatever, and it's like you've then wasted an entire day. But anyway, so that's obviously one type of feedback, is to help kind of during course correct, but also in terms of giving the learner feedback so they know what they're learning and whether they're going to hit the outcomes, which if it's an accredited course, obviously they've got to be kind of assessed. It helps them give that feedback so they know that they're going to either pass or need extra work or what they need to learn. But obviously, as a trainer, although this is not delivered for training providers, what we're talking here is to TMs that are doing it as part of their job. It is really good to get feedback on your delivery post course or post session, because you're just flying blind at this point. You have no idea whether the content was correct. You have no idea whether you got a really irritating tick or something. I know I had one course early in my career where I was chewing gum. I got very nervous, and you notice it. I'm sure audience here, I mean, we've got a few people on the stream, like probably have been to other ones and have noticed that I do a lot of drinking and I do a lot of twiddling with pens and stuff. Like, it's just a tick I have. But when I was delivering this session in the classroom, I chewed gum for 3 days, and the feedback was, just don't chew gum. I was like, that's fair. It's and I don't do it now. It's like, because to me it wasn't a big deal. It was a way of coping while delivering to a large group. I was quite young at the time, so you need, and also this person felt as though they could give me the feedback, which was nice. But actually, in terms of surveys, making them anonymous means that people can give you real feedback.
Yeah, definitely. Anonymous feedback is excellent. And again, if people want to put their name on, offer that ability for them, because they may want that additional support, and that's their way of reaching out to you. So always want the anonymous feedback, but always try to make it where they can put their name on there if they choose. But it's really important for a transport manager, like you were saying, to get feedback from the learners who have attended that course. Now, you as a transport manager may have sent them on a driver CPC course to a training provider, and you don't know what they've delivered, and you get their feedback. So their feedback, and this is no disrespect to any training provider, because obviously I know a lot of them and they know me, but that feedback is for them, their course, their tutor, their delivery. What you want feedback on is now how that driver is going to work better for your company as a driver, and did they get everything that they needed as a driver from that course. So your questions are going to be different to the training providers. So
I think we have
always
got
do your own feedback.
We've got some resources that we've got here that we'll be sort of talking about that people can kind of download and use afterwards, because I think there's some really good stuff in how we kind of structure these things. So obviously we kind of come not necessarily to the end, but in terms of like a lot of the stuff we've spoken about is kind of formal training, kind of like box ticking accredited stuff, which is standardized training that is all part of a training program. But we've also spoken about like ad hoc things, either proactive or reactive, needs of the company, needs of the driver, etc. We've got some notes here on like it's probably good practice to have like themes or kind of like different months or weeks. So we've got the example like Taco Download Week. Well, it's Pride Month this month. It was Mental Health Awareness Month this month, and Pride Week, Pride Month. There's lots of months we can get on board with, but and without wanting to kind of like what's the word, pride wash, green wash, like pay lip service something and not really give it like the focus it should have, you can use these months to highlight issues that you want to discuss, and putting it into the training program is really kind of an interesting way of doing it. So, for example, Mental Health Awareness Month, you could deliver a toolbox talk on recognizing depression, for example.
Yes.
We really should have done mental health for this first one because it is Mental Health Awareness Month. That would have been a far better thing to do. But anyway, next month we're doing that, so we can talk in that in more detail. But like those themes, I think helps, because then it's not just training. You can incorporate that in other activities in the workplace as well, which then consolidates learning in its own right as well.
Definitely, even updates. If you've got updates within the business, create a theme around that update, so it resonates for that month. So people can get involved in that as that month on. So it's entirely up to you how you do it, whether you do it weekly, fortnightly, monthly, or bi-monthly. It's entirely up to you as a transport manager or a supervisor. But themes are great because it stays and remains in the brain for that month and the months afterwards as well, and it gets people involved. And as a transport manager, anyway, I don't want to dictate this, but you should be following updates, current news, affairs, stuff like that, and you can use those type of topics as well.
Yeah.
I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we had 3 bridge strikes that were in the news, one straight after the other, and obviously bridge strikes is a big subject, and it's one that's foremost anyway for drivers and transport managers to get that point across. But 3 times within literally 3 or 4 days is big news. So it needs going out there. So introduce your own themes. Could be a new policy, new procedure, bridge strikes, taco week, but also create games for it. Have a little bit of a competition going on. Give the winner something free as well. At the end of it, a nice prize.
It's one of the reasons why we do the monthly safety briefing for free for everyone. Is it's kind of a chance for us to kind of bring all that stuff together that people can then cherry pick the important stuff they want to discuss within their organizations that month. So and I do think the industry is it's very archaic in some ways, very dated in some ways, but there's a huge amount of innovation going on. There's a huge amount of great stuff going on. Going to live events like RTX, CV show, Microlize, that sort of stuff, I think is all really, really important. It does bring in new ideas. I know I was talking to, I think it was Craig Wilmore, who was from Tripod Crest, who came on the pod a few weeks ago, and we're talking like he's doing some great stuff in STGO with kind of local kind of organizations. And I'm not speaking to him in more detail, but like I saw him at the show and he was talking about kind of the new camera systems they're going to be implementing. There's so much stuff going on that's really interesting that you should never really struggle to find a topic to talk about, because there's always stuff that you can discuss. So, I think we'll kind of start wrapping up in terms of the content. What I did want to point out is this does sort of kick off our kind of our partnership with you guys. We have just kind of added onto our portal, onto the TMC, the ability to kind of contact you guys and work with you. So we'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a second. But obviously, part of this is kicking off the summer series that we're doing in terms of content, and we're going to do one of these a month. So if people did find this one useful and entertaining, then obviously do kind of see for updates on the next one. We spoke about kind of some free downloads and stuff, and all this stuff. I think you've actually created an entire kind of session, haven't you? It was on eco driving, I think, is what we've decided. Is that correct?
Yeah. So with the downloadable side, you get obviously this what we've discussed today with a few more pieces of information in there, a bit more detail to run through, and then the eco driving driver CPC course that we had created. We didn't issue out to anybody. Check that our resources are capable of producing driver CPC quality products. So what we've done now is put that together and put it on your system that's able for you to download.
And so that's going to be available for all free members of the TMC. So we're making this one totally free. So if you are not yet a member of the TMC, do go sign up, because it will be in the resources section. along with obviously this recording will be part of the on the platform as well, and obviously all the notes as you said we're spoken about. We are going to ask, just while we kind of just before we sum up entirely, we are going to ask the question if anyone has, obviously DTS has got bank of video content that kind of goes with their learning. You very kindly offer to kind of provide some of these free of charge to TMC members.
Yeah.
But rather than us being too didactic and sort of saying this is what we're going to provide, we do kind of want feedback from the audience. So if people are still kind of hanging on, I know we're going on 50 odd minutes now and people have got to get back to their real jobs. But if anyone's got any kind of specifics, I mean, what sort of, give me, while we wait for that to sort of trickle in, what sort of ideas, what sort of things could we have access to?
Okay, so you could have access to vehicle walk-around checks, and sort of like one of those. You could have vehicle reversing, how to reverse vehicle. So it's a recap of maybe using the new functions of the camera mirrors rather than that you see on all the vehicles. So you choose a subject. If you put them in the comment section, and we'll start. If we've not got the video that you want, we'll go away and we'll create that because we know it's content that somebody wants.
Yeah,
we'll create that content and we'll post it on there as well. So
yeah,
various different topics. It could be how to use a digital tachograph into the unit. And
I mean, we initially kind of, obviously, most of your, I would say, the point of the partnership with yourselves is our TMZ members can sort of work with you guys to then deliver the online learning to their drivers. That's kind of the point of this kind of thing for you guys, is getting that kind of recruitment of people to deliver your sessions. So if you are interested, obviously join the TMC, and there's a form you can fill in to kind of send details across to DTS, so they'll contact you directly. But as part of that partnership, obviously this content is quite key for me to make sure we've got some great quality content. And we kind of realised that a lot of TMs are not necessarily drivers. So although this content is aimed at drivers, this content would be great for those that maybe don't drive and would actually want to understand. We talked about job sharing and going kind of right on. This is a way of kind of getting some of that key content without having to do that. Especially if you're an external TM, it sometimes can be quite hard to get the time to do that. So I think the point of this is if anyone is sort of kind of doesn't want to necessarily put their hand up and say they don't know something, that's fine. Feel free to DM me if you'd rather not put it in the comments and stuff. But I think we're going to try and get 5 videos together and put it onto the TMC. So we'll leave the chat open.
And it could be a day in the life of a driver if they want to know what other drivers typical what they get involved with. It could be that we're doing those type of videos as well. So whatever you feel that you want as a transport manager, or what you want to be able to share with maybe your drivers or traffic office staff, feel free to let us know, and we'll create those videos.
Yeah, I think it's this is hopefully going to kick off kind of quite a kind of content partnership with you guys, and I'm really excited that we can kind of show this to the world now, because we've been working on this for the last kind of couple months in various ways, and I'm kind of keen to kind of see how it's going to progress. So what we'll do is we'll leave the chat open for a few more minutes afterwards. I'll probably just kind of blank the screen so people can kind of put stuff into the comments. But yeah, is there anything else you wanted to add before we kind of wrap up?
If you, obviously we offer the free full version trial as well. So if you want to try that with your drivers, online e-learning, and if you've got a particular driver who needs to learn a particular subject, again, reach out to us, ask for that trial version. We'll send it to the driver, and then they can give you the feedback as well to see if they've learned anything. So that's another thing that we're offering as well through your customers. And I don't know, are there any questions that you want to hit while we've got 5 minutes?
I mean, I don't need to ask anything else. I've asked about 1 billion questions, and people are bored of my voice. I think we had a few people kind of sort of saying. I think Mickey had a few points. He said that struggling to recruit drivers that would even contemplate doing handball. I very much get the attitudes of I'm just a driver. What's your response to that? I guess, Dean, is I'd be keen to find out more.
Yeah, no, that's it's understandable. There are some drivers out there who just want to be drivers, but there's also a lot of drivers who will take on the handballing jobs for that experience as well. So, and I know it's difficult, this kind of subject, to do is reach out to the new drivers that are out there who need that experience and can't get a job because they've not got experience. They will gladly take handballing jobs where it's a bit of a mix of driver, handballing on and off. It's a lot easier now than what it used to be in terms of handballing.
I could imagine
safety issues that have come through to make it a lot easier for drivers to handball this. But yeah, there are those jobs out there for drivers who do want handballing. But attack the new driver network and get through those type of drivers and bring them on because they're wanting experience. The way they can get experience is unfortunately taking those jobs that other people don't want as drivers.
Yeah, no, agreed. I know. Probably now's not the time. I know you guys are working with organisations that do just this thing. So if anyone is keen to find out more, I'm sure Dean will be leaving his DMs open so you can talk to him about this. But as I say, Dean's going to be coming on kind of regularly once a month doing these live. So if you've got any questions, do obviously either send them over or kind of get them over to us when we next chat. I think we'll probably wrap up there. So thank you, Dean, for this first live stream. How did you find it?
A bit beforehand, but yeah, we got into it.
I must say,
I enjoyed it.
I was having a conversation with my my 4-year-old daughter this morning about. She said she was having a sleepover with my parents-in-law, and she's a bit nervous about going because she's seeing some new people at the same time. I was like, okay, nerves are fine. There's nothing wrong with nerves. I said, I'm going to be nervous. I'm doing a live stream this afternoon. And I've done how many of these now? 4 or 5 of these. I still have to go for a walk beforehand for 10 minutes. I just get so pent up in energy. So yeah, no, nerves are fine. I think it means you care. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it though, and we got into it. And I think there's many more to come. So yeah.
Yes, definitely. Appreciate the opportunity, Alan. It's something good that we're trying to create.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm keen to see where this goes. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to the audience for kind of joining as well. And I don't know what we're doing next week. We've got a live stream, I think, next week, but I think we're doing one next month. So keep your eyes peeled for those. Other than that, thank you very much, and I'll speak to you guys soon.
Thanks all.
Cheers. And now we get this awkward bit where I've got to go through all the things and click stop. And so you get all this stuff, which is all fantastic. I look even more gormless than I